Legacy. How ironic. The name of the hotel. First time I stepped into this library, one of the attendees said, "Isn't that ironic that you're in a library?" I didn't even click. Like, I just have, yeah. Right? Did you just catch it too, Matt? You just got it. I didn't get it either. What do I have to do? What am I being pointed? You know, you get to a certain age where they start bossing you around. Do this. Go there. Okay. Yes, Mom.
Yes, Mom is crazy.
Yeah, that's how it goes. You get to a certain age and the tables turn, you know. 1998, Cinco de Mayo. That's the day we landed in Mexico. In a little town called Rosarito. You see, just prior to that, Craig and I totally went behind the ears. I was 20 years old when we got married. 21 when I had Deborah Ann. 22 when I had Jessica. And the Lord said that we would go to places we'd never heard of. Meet people in tribes and tongues that we never knew or understood. I was in little South Africa, in little Johannesburg, in our little town, in little Benoni. Nobody knows about Benoni. I sure didn't know in Benoni that there was a Rosarito. I didn't even know what a nacho was. That's what we called nachos in South Africa. Wow. That's how bad it was. They were nachos. And quesadillas. There's a queue in quesadilla. There's a queue. And when you're in South Africa and you've never had Mexican food in your life, and all you knew about Mexicans was tequila, it was a quesadilla. And so when the call came for us to take our 1 and our 2-year-old, pack ourselves on an airplane, go across the world, 2 days of journeying, Jesus. First time on an airplane. Well, the first time on an airplane actually was when my parents flew us from Zimbabwe when I was 5. So the second time on an airplane, and it's all the way to San Diego, because that's where we landed. So nobody wants to land in Tijuana. I don't recommend it. No.
Very bad place to live.
All the way to San Diego, my first flight. I was a young mom, by then 22, 23. My 2 little babies with me. No idea. We just knew this one thing. God said, "Would you?" And we said, "We would." I had no idea the price we would pay. I didn't know that when we landed, within a year of landing, the businessman who was supporting us would pull absolutely all funding. And I would be stranded with my 2 babies, with no place to live, nothing to eat, no electricity, and no running water, living in tents in Rosarito, Mexico. You see, I didn't know that was ahead. And somebody said to me once, they said to me, "So, didn't you ever think that something was wrong?" I said, "That didn't occur to me." I was young, I guess. But I had such a fire for God in me. It didn't occur to me that something was wrong. It occurred to me I had to push. It occurred to me that I wasn't there for me. It occurred to me I was there for my children. I didn't even know that there were more to come. I just knew that we had to get through and that we had to pay every price that we could to get through. But I had no sacrifice to give my God. I had no money to give my God. I had no house to give my God. I had no car to give my God. So I got on my face and I travailed and I praised because that's all I had to give my God. And that's what we did because, well, we didn't have food anyway. So we would wake up and for breakfast we would worship and drink water and maybe tea, and the kids, they can get their Maruchan noodles because they're $1 a piece. And then for lunch we would worship, and for dinner we would worship, and that's how this ministry was founded. Oh, I come from great legacy. And we were walking the beach one day. You know, I really relate so well to the story of Hagar. And she put her son to the side and then went to go weep and just travail, because that's what I did. We put the kids to bed. And we were just a couple of houses from the beach. And we hadn't paid rent in a good couple of months, but God gave us so much favor with the landlord that he didn't kick us out because we had no flight tickets to get home. We didn't have any family that would bail us out. Everybody thought we were out of our minds in the first place. We had no organization backing us. We didn't have a church. We didn't even speak Spanish, and I was still calling them quesadillas. We were in a bad way. So we put the kids to bed late at night, and we walked down and began walking that beach. And we were crying out. My children. Father, feed my children. Come on now. And as we're walking, just this ridiculous idea just drops in my spirit. Start a prophetic school. Online.
Excuse me.
But remember, I'm young, I'm foolish. Anything's possible. Remember those days? And so I said, guys, I got this wild idea. We've got an internet connection still, praise God. We've got a camera. We had a camera that we'd brought with us. And I said, and we're dying every single day. Because God had started during those times of intercession and prayer and whatnot. We're having these incredible encounters in the spirit every single time. Well, I mean, when you're not eating and you're worshiping and praying and like stuff happened. Stuff happened. It's just us. We're just there. What else are we going to do? What else are you going to do, right? And but stuff started to happen, and we started going through process. And then the crazy thing was, as I recognized, hang on, my process looks like your process. And then as we're talking to other people who are prophetic, we started recognizing that there seems to be a pattern here. Seems that all prophets seem to be going through the stuff. So I said, well, here's an idea. Why don't we just put it out there? Why don't we just start a prophetic school, and as we're going through and dying, we'll just throw the blood out there and see who catches it. Right? I mean, in many ways, I think we're a little curious. Guys, this was 1999. We're the first prophetic school online. Hailing from Mexico. Just let that sink in. We're an online prophetic school based in Mexico. Yeah. Just nothing was for us. But you know what was insane? Is that the minute we sent that word out, all the John the Baptists responded. They were all in the wilderness like us, like we were literally in the wilderness. They were all in the wilderness like us. They were all dying like us. They were all getting kicked out of their churches just like us. They were all ridiculous, wild and crazy, misbehaving rebels without a cause, just like us. I was like, oh my goodness, how's this possible? It's like we sent a flare up into the night and just everybody came running. And then we had an even crazy idea. Why don't we begin this school and then have a conference? By that time, God had opened the door through online that we started getting $20 a weekend. Praise God. We could buy bread with the Maruchan noodles. God was on the move. Listen, I have never worshipped so much for $20 in my life. I could get milk with my tea because we're English. We put milk with our tea. You got to understand. Okay? And then I had bread instead of the Maruchan noodles. Okay? We were moving up in this world. And again, you're thinking to yourself, who is going to come all the way to Rosarito? Now, guys, you need to understand, we did not have access to the United States at the time this was all going on. We only had access to the world through an internet connection. So for those of you, when Deborah was saying, what's your excuse this morning? I just can't hear another excuse. I can't serve God because of A, B, C, D. We couldn't speak the language. We had no connection. We couldn't cross the states. We couldn't travel. We had no money. We had no food. We had our praise. We had an internet connection, and we were called of God. And that was enough for God to use. That was enough for God to use. He just needed, he needed more than our yes. He needed us to stop saying no. And he used that. And so we had our very first conference in Rosarito, Mexico, at this little hotel. And the group size was actually not much bigger than this one, maybe even smaller. And people from all over the world came. We had Russia. We had Singapore. We had Canada. We had Switzerland and Germany in about 25 people. They flew in from all over the world to come to Mexico in Rosarito, Mexico. I just need you to grasp that that was the real miracle. But it was there, and the Lord told us back then, He said, a baby's being born. He said, when I gave birth, when I let my son give birth, it was in Bethlehem. And only ones that knew were the shepherds and the wise men. He said, I'm sending you the shepherds and the wise men to witness the birth. He said, don't expect the crowds. And the reason why I'm telling you the story is as I'm preparing for this and we're travailing for this whole service, the Lord said, it's Bethlehem. Don't expect the crowds. I'm bringing you the shepherds. I'm bringing you the wise men because it's time for something new to be born. Thank you, son. And we're right back there again. And I'm looking at this room and I'm having deja vu. I'm having deja vu. And all these tribes and all these tongues brought to us from the nations, all of you from all over the world. When I say you're handpicked, trust me, this is something so much bigger than you. This is something so much bigger than you coming to join a little conference to see who's who. You're somebody. You're somebody. Now use what you've got. It was that conference that was the catalyst for everything else. It was that conference that opened up the doors to Europe. I had 2 apostles release me into America. You're the second. Because our dominion was in Europe, in Switzerland. That's where we did all our church planting. That was such a catalyst. The Lord took us and He launched Craig and I. We were sent out. We went to Switzerland, Europe, where the prophetic was still very young and very new age. It's a very strong new age territory. Again, naive. Yes, Lord, let's just give up our country. Just give up everything. Take our then 3 kids. By then, Rebecca was 1 year old. Let's drag them to the next country. And so we did. And they brought us there to teach them about the prophetic. But while we were there, we recognized they needed more than the prophetic. They needed church structure. And that's actually when our apostolic training began. I don't like church planting.
It's horrible.
It's horrible. Sheep bite worse than wolves. But I needed to be processed. God knew I needed to be humbled, and that did it. That did it.
Help us, God.
But that is where I found my identity. Working with elders, planting churches. And then just as we were getting pretty good at it, I was feeling pretty good about myself. I was like, here we go. I mean, we when you're a little South African, I grew up in poverty, I had nothing, it's like when you come from that and then you start making it, and listen, Switzerland's not a poor country. Let me tell you, if anything will obliterate a poverty mentality, Switzerland ought to do it for you. Just drive through Geneva, they'll settle you. It's just when the door hop, the dude, he's dressed better than you, driving a better car than you. It's like, oh, okay, Cartier, Rolex, then you got this sheik who owns this hotel. You really do yourself a favor one day. Geneva will just blow your mind. And God had us work in this country, these little poverty-stricken South Africans who were just excited about milk for their tea. And there was this whole other world with so much money to the point of feeling embarrassed. Talk about from one extent to the next. And Nespresso, that is truly where my love for Nespresso was born. It was born in Switzerland. Yes, that's where it started. The addiction started right back then. Just coming clean. We're being real. That's what Deborah said this morning, right? Keeping it real. And just when I was getting real good at it, chuffed with myself, the Lord said, yeah, well, I didn't call you to plant churches. I'm like, what have I been doing for the last 5 years? He said, I didn't call you to plant churches. So I called you as a mother. You to birth. I called you as a trainer. Go equip, send them out. Just even in the last year, the Lord said to me, Colette, I'm going to take you to a new realm. I'm going to take you to a new place. You've never been before. He said, but I require a price of you. And He said to me, you will never own territory. He said, you are Abraham and you are Sarah. And the only territory you will ever own will be a graveyard. He said, your generations will possess the land. Your generations will build. They will establish. They will own. But you will always be on the move. You will always break ground so they can build. You will always go without so they will possess. You will always pave the way. That's the price I require of you. That is legacy. That is legacy. We read the men and women of old. We look at Abraham and we look at Isaac and we look at Jacob. We look at David and we look at Solomon. And we're seeing now, and we've been talking about the next generation. How do you raise the next generation? How do you make sure that what you have goes to the next generation? That's what we're talking about here today. And what you have to do is you have to prepare them to take their territories. You cannot micromanage them. You cannot take ownership of them. You cannot control them, but you have to raise them. You have to equip them, and then they will take the territories that you cannot. And that is the price of legacy. That is the price of being a parent. That is the price of being an apostle. And some have not caught on to it. Being an apostle isn't about how many territories you own. Being an apostle is not about how many churches you've started. Being an apostle isn't about how high and mighty you are and how many people follow you. Your apostleship will be proven by your grandchildren. That is legacy. That is apostleship. Apostleship isn't proven here. It's proven when I see my little grandkids running around knowing that one day they're going to dominate their territory. That's what I'm living for. That's what I'm aiming for. Deborah said it so well this morning. The previous generation started a thing, but will this generation please finish it? But we're trying to do both, start and finish. But we cannot. Do you know how humbling that is as a leader? To not be able to finish.
That's good.
Talk about prices you have to pay. God gave Abraham the vision, guys. He knew, he walked that whole land. It's going to be mine one day. It's going to be mine one day. I'm going to dig wells, because when you dig wells are a sign of ownership. You see, in those days, it was more than just digging a well. It was kind of like staking your claim in the land. If you dug a well, you owned that territory, which is why there was a lot of fights over the well. It was more than just the well. It was actually the deed for the land. And Abraham was preparing the way for his children. But you know what they did to those wells? They put dirt in them, which means Abraham couldn't even possess his own wells. He couldn't even possess his own wells. But his children did. But his children could possess the wells, he never could. His children could take the inheritance, he never could. And the first step that you ever make as an apostle is recognizing that the more that you take on is the more you take off. The more you pick up is the more you pick down. The more mantles you collect, the more naked you will stand before God. Because those mantles aren't for you. Those anointings aren't for you. Those giftings aren't for you. That power is not for you. It's for the next generation. I will have God take me through an entire process to get a mantle for one spiritual child. And when I hand it to them, I never walk in that again. Yeah. I'll never walk in that again. Yes, I'm listening to this. You're going through this process where God has had you go through a process. You have to pay, you have to die for it. You have to bleed for it, to get that anointing, to get that gift, to do that thing. Only for you to impart it and let it go. It was on hold. You were a surrogate. For those of you who are called to be spiritual mothers, this is what it looks like. You will always be the surrogate for somebody else's grace. You will always pay the price for somebody else's process. You will always birth for somebody else's possession. Always. That's the price we're called to pay. And there are very few who are willing to pay it. So I do look around and wonder when the true apostles will rise up. You know, we're gathering so many sons and daughters. We're gathering so many gifts and mantles. Never mind Joseph's coat of many colors. You're wearing so many coats you can hardly move. Don't hand any of them off. And then you're not willing when you hand it off to really let it go and let them carry the mantle that you paid the price for. And then they go and use that mantle in a way that you did not want them to use it. Lord Jesus. I feel like staring down all my daughters, but they're not an eye shot. There's one. You give them the mantle, and then they use it their own way. Their own way. Their own way. They don't do it my way. They do it their way. It's not fair. It's not fair. I should be allowed to at least micromanage. Oh, there's another one. Really? They go and next gen the whole thing, like vamp it up. You know, we write a lot of our own music. I write the songs. It's a nice song. They sing the song. They totally trash it. Totally trash it.
Wow.
They rewrite it. They add new beat. They riff it. I'm like, there was no riffing in there, Nate. You know, but it's a country. You can't riff a country song. He's like, watch me. Yeah. Welcome to legacy. This letting go. And this oil is coming down very fresh. It's very fresh in case you don't see it. Like I'm in the press at the moment, just so you're clear.
Yeah.
The letting go is the hardest part of the process. The hardest part of the process. Because you've always covered and you've always protected and you've always prayed through and you've always taken care. But then they've got to go do something that is the hardest part of all. They've got to go and pay their own price for the mantle that they've just received. But here's the thing, guys, we fast-tracked them. We fast-tracked them because we went through the process, got the mantle, got the grace, got the wisdom, got the doctrine, imparted that to them. They have all of that wealth now at their disposal, but it doesn't mean that it's a plug and play. They've got to now go through their own process. I have got to at least get to one of the 100 scriptures I've got here today. And actually, I'm gonna jump straight to Jacob. Genesis 32:24. Very famous passage. Then Jacob was left alone. Then Jacob was left alone. And a man wrestled with him until the breaking of day. Now when he saw that he did not prevail against him, he touched the socket of his hip. And the socket of Jacob's hip was out of joint as he wrestled with him. And he said, let me go, for the day breaks. But he said, I will not let you go until you bless me. Jacob should have had it so much easier. I mean, we're talking third generation. We have Abraham who had an encounter. I mean, he walked through the burning pieces, the dead animals. He saw the God walk through. And God gave him a promise. You will inherit the nations. Isaac was a miracle baby. A miracle baby. I mean, we want to talk about legacy. We want to talk about ancient oil here. Now, I just want to put it in modern day context. Like we know that we can sit under a mighty man of God, right? We can sit under an Abraham. We can sit under an Isaac. And man, their oil is fragranced. It is beautiful. And you know that the more that you sit under that man of God, you will receive their oil. And I mean, we're talking about the originator here. So we're talking about some heavy duty oil here. We're talking about miraculous, I had a baby, the 100 oil here. God did things for Abraham he didn't do for anybody else. I mean, you could be Abraham's spiritual son. I mean, just give me a snatch of that. Just snatch some of that oil of him. You know how many come sit by the man of God, just touch the hem of his garment, just snatch some of that. But here we have direct descent, direct line with the most purest oil you could imagine. It should have been instantaneous. I mean, it was there. It was in the closet. He could walk up. He could open the closet. He could help himself to everything in Dad's fridge, right? He could pick and choose whatever he wanted. But yet what happens to the one who is chosen? Does he get to stay at home with mom and dad? Does he get to marry whomever he wants? No. Those whom God favors seem to have a very hard time in life. Jacob have I loved, Esau have I hated. I'm like, I don't want to be loved. Esau had it so fine.
So easy.
Marry who he wanted, acting like he wanted. With daddy favorite boy, he was buff, he was hairy. That was a thing. I guess that was a thing. But the one whom God loved, the one whom God chose, the one whom God picked out, was still unmarried after your brother had 2 wives.
Right.
Meditate on this. He was the bachelor in the family. I mean, they're twins. Twins. And he didn't even have a wife. He didn't even have a love interest. He didn't even have a girlfriend. He's a nobody. He's a mommy's boy. You're like mama's tent. He's got nothing. He doesn't look like the big and up and coming. But yet, at any time, he could walk in there. And even he does, right? He even walks in and steals that birthright from his dad. Now he's thinking, for sure I got it now. For sure I got it now. For sure I got the oil now because now I took it from dad. Yeah, that did not turn out well for him. I don't see any oil on Jacob right after that. He don't look oily. Nothing's happening for Jacob. He ends up having to run for his life and then get used and abused by Laban for years and years and years. 7 years for each of his wives. 7 years working for a man that changed his wages, very loved of God. And yet still he didn't have the oil. He was processed, still didn't have the oil. That's because we needed this encounter. See, that none of that was going to give this right here, when Jacob was alone, when Jacob was alone. Mommy and Daddy weren't there, his wives, when he was alone. He began to wrestle with God. And that was the day he got the oil. That was the day he began to walk in the inheritance that was already promised to him. As fathers, as mothers, as apostles, we can position them as much as we want. We can lay hands and we can impart and we can preach and we can pray and we can train and we can babysit and we can stay awake with them until 5 a.m. and we can help them in every aspect of their lives, and none of that will release the inheritance of oil that is due to them, because it's got to be more than man. They've got to wrestle with God for it. They've got to wrestle with God for it. And it is only those spiritual sons and daughters that wrestle with God for it that will get your oil.
Rich.
But as a mother, as a father, to allow them to wrestle is a price of its own. That's the price of its own. Learning to let go and for them to be alone, to wrestle the angel until the victory comes through. One thing I never wanted was for my children to be homeless. I never wanted my children to go with lack. I never wanted my kids, and we were going through a phase, because the Lord promised me that my children would never suffer lack. He said, I will take care of your children. All 3 of my daughters were unplanned pregnancies. Michael, my son, who is the most mischievous and giving me the toughest time, was the planned one. He's at the back. All of my daughters were unplanned. And I was like, Jesus? He said, they're mine. And I will provide for your children. So I remember that was going through a phase where it didn't look like he was, filling his end of the bargain here. I was like, remember that promise? He said, yes. He said, but Colette, how did you get to this level of faith that you have? How did you reach this place that you have? He said, let them go through. Take your hands off of them. Let them die. Let them wrestle. Let them go through the process. Let their own faith push them forward. That is the hardest price. Listen, you guys. If you don't take your hands off, you hinder God. Take your hands off. Take your hands off. Take your hands off. Impartation is not enough. Releases. You can stand here and ordain them as much as you like until they wrestle with that angel in the darkest of the night, fearing for their life because they don't know what lies on the other side of the river. They're not getting the oil. They're not getting the oil. Why was he alone? Because he was terrified. Was Esau, my brother, going to kill me? He never felt more alone. He left one abusive spiritual father going to back home, not even knowing who would be there except maybe Esau, who would take his life. And he was stuck between a rock and a hard place. He couldn't go back, and he was terrified to go forward. And you cannot set them up for this, guys. No matter how much I trained my kids, I could not arrange the circumstances for their victory. No matter how much I imparted and taught them and trained them and warned them. I'm a mother. I warn a lot.
Did they listen?
No, they never listen. Who listens to mom? They had to be in a place where Laban was behind them and Esau was before them.
Come on now.
They had to be in a place of their own decision where they were going to choose which way they were going to go. And it was in that moment that they received the oil.
That's right.
No man can give you the oil. No, I don't care whose line you come from. Listen, I need you to get this, because Esau was from that line too. Esau was from that line too. No man can call you. No man can anoint you. No man can equip you. They can position you. They can train you. They can impart. They can stir the gifts up and give you direction, give you sight, give you vision, give you ears to hear. Only God is the one who can draw the oil from one generation and impart it to the next. Only God can be the bridge between these two. And this is where we're missing it in the body of Christ, is that we think it's up to us. We think that it's up to us to infuse the power into them. It's up to us to infuse them with oil. It's up to us to just like literally spoon feed it to them. And if they won't be spoon feed, we're going to force feed it, like watching them force feed my grandbaby's medicine. They can't stand David, my eldest. He cannot stand. He just hints. We even try putting it in other bottles, but if he catches that sniff, after being in the NICU, if you come near this baby with anything medical, he just has a fit. And so watching Deborah giving medicine is like, it's a full contact sport. She has to wrangle him with her legs and then with her arms and force feed him and then hold his mouth shut. You know the drill? You block their nose, you hold it, so you can scrump for you. Mommy loves you.
Mommy loves you.
This is my love right now. Swallow. I came to realize that when you do that with spiritual children, there's no guarantee it's going to stick. How many children have you tried to force feed the oil to? Because you see so much potential. Man,
Oh, yeah. Come on.
they're hungry. They've got it. I mean, I'm sure that if I just one more time, maybe I just didn't do it right. Maybe I didn't preach it right. Maybe this will be different. Maybe Esau, maybe he just needs to shave. Maybe he's too hairy. Maybe we could just work on that. Maybe that would make him favored. Maybe that would give him the oil. And Esau, he felt a little bad too. He's like, it's right. I see mom and dad don't like me with these foreign wives. Let me just go get a wife of, our people. Then that'll do it. That'll do it. Let me just go marry someone. Let me just go marry someone that's in the oil line. That ought to do it. There's nothing that Esau could do. There's nothing that Esau could do to get the oil. And he tried. He begged, he pleaded, Father, give it to me. Father, give it to me. Father, give it to me. If it was just desire, he would have got it. But he wasn't chosen for the oil, you guys. There comes a time we need to recognize we're chosen for the oil, and the oil is chosen for us, and maybe that person is chosen for us, but just because that person is chosen for us doesn't mean they're chosen for our oil. Sometimes God will bring someone to you just because God brings someone to you. They don't have to carry your oil. They're not called to carry your oil. They don't want to carry your oil. And that's okay. It's okay. Only one son got the oil. Man, yeah. I turned 50 this year. I have to keep saying it out loud just so that I can come to terms with it and I just face the realities that I'm half a century old. Stop laughing. Dalton is just laughing too. He just knows me well.
Vintage.
Vintage. Thank you, sweetheart. But when I look through all those years, I mean, guys, I can't even count how many people we trained and pastored and imparted into. But do you know how much I exhausted myself? I mean, actually ministered myself into a very deep pit.
Yes.
Of discouragement.
That's it.
Because I was so busy trying to force feed that oil to everybody. And every time there were those that didn't get it, they didn't swallow it, and even when it kind of sort of did, they didn't function in it.
Yeah.
I would, and look, maybe you guys relate, but I'm a mother. So it's like the first thing moms always do is they say, what did I do wrong? Because as moms, that's what we do. We just take on the weight of the world. Everything, every failure of our kids, our fault. We just love to walk around feeling guilty. It's just a mom thing. It's part of our DNA somehow. And so I kind of carried that over into the spiritual side. And everyone that either rejected us or didn't walk in it, and I would go in my mind over everything. But I did this and I prayed that and I did that. Should have worked. Let me try something else, because I'm a teacher, so I'm like, let's figure this out. No, that still didn't work. Okay, maybe I used the wrong principle. Maybe I said the wrong prayer. Let me go read. Let me go study. Let me go pray. Let me try it again. No, that still didn't work. Lord, what did I do wrong? They weren't chosen for my oil, but it took me a very, very long time. But look, they were hungry. They were thirsty. They wanted it. They were so... And then we both split up, ugly split ups. Come on. Ugly, because they have an expectation that you're going to give them something, right? They have an expectation. You have an expectation of them. Then they're not matching your expectation. You don't see any of your spiritual DNA in them whatsoever. That's like they take none of you. They don't even prophesy like you. They still want to believe their own different doctrines to you. And so you think, I just need to keep wrestling to the ground and keep force feeding them that oil. And eventually one day it's going to kick in. Now what's going to happen is you're going to have a very, very ugly breakup. You're going to have a very nasty, painful breakup. And while you're wasting time on your Esau's, you're overlooking the mama's boy in his mama's tent, smooth-skinned and already looking. The little unmarried nerd who had to trick daddy into loving him. That little loser, that's the one chosen for your oil. That was the one chosen for your oil. The most unlikely. He didn't look the part. He didn't act the part. The most unlikely is the one whom God chose. And that's the one who's called to wrestle. And the difference between them is that Jacob follows through. Listen to me. Listen to me. Jacob follows through for himself when he's alone. When he's alone. Not when you're watching. Not when everybody else is watching. Not when he's going to get praise for it. Not when he's going to get a badge for it. Not when he's going to get fame for it. But when he's alone. When nobody's there to notice. When you're not there to see. That's your Jacob. He's the one at the back of the church who always just somehow shows up but never says anything. And hungry and thirsty. That's the one chosen for your oil. But you know what? We get so busy, apostles. We get so busy investing and imparting into those that are so hungry and so keen and have so much potential. And they're such mighty men. No, they're not mighty men. They belong to Saul's army. Because David got the losers. David got the losers.
Right, yeah.
David didn't choose Absalom, Adonijah. He chose the bookworm. God chose the bookworm. God chose Solomon. Why? Because Absalom was just like daddy. I mean, come on.
Yes, he was.
Yeah. Come on.
Just like.
Are you going to choose someone to take on your legacy? You're going to choose someone that looked like daddy. He was the man. That's why David, he didn't want to lift his hand against his son, because that was a like image. You're looking at yourself and you're looking at his son. This is surely the one. But God says, no, I'm choosing Solomon. Solomon, Lord. Solomon, though. He's such a, he probably stared at rainbows and butterflies. He was a little weirdo kid, because, you just don't feel like him and his brothers got on. He's probably the one kid there sitting in a palace grounds like, oh, look at the birdie. It's so beautiful. Look at how it flies and moves. And I know that because it said he wrote so much on insects and animals. He literally sat looking at the butterflies. Mr. Loverboy, does this look like someone who's going to be able to take territories? But guess what? Solomon didn't need to take territories. He needed to establish them. Sorry, if you need somebody just like you to finish the job you started, you didn't start a very good job. Because it takes
No need for a lot of
apostolic work to plow.
Yeah.
But it takes a different kind of grace to build and establish.
Come on.
Your problem is you're trying to do both.
That's good.
That's why the Lord said to me, you will not own. You will not. That's not your grace. I plow. I pioneer. That's why we've been to so many countries. That's why God, every time I get comfy, He throws us somewhere else. He throws us somewhere else. We've got to plow. They've got to build. So we can't have the same grace. We can't have the same abilities. They can't be splitting images like their mom, although I know they all have my attitude. That comes through very loud and clear. I know they have my tenacity. I know I've taught them faith. I know I've taught them love. I know I've taught them honor. I know I've taught them to fight. I know I've taught them to die. I've taught them to die a lot to themselves. I've taught them to surrender. I've taught them to sacrifice. I taught them to humble themselves. But what they're going to do, I would never have the capacity to do. And such should a nature of an apostle work be. If they could do my job, I failed. I'm not meant to build the cities. I'm meant to break ground for them. So I don't want someone like me. I want someone that can finish what I started. I don't need another pioneer. I'm pioneering. Get out of my way. I drive, I go, and I don't say sorry. So just move. We're not going to get on. I don't need another one of me. One of me is really, ask my husband. He'll tell you it's enough. It's enough. But what I need is someone to build. What I need is someone to take the seeds of revival and plant them. What I need is someone like Isaac to go to the wells that I dug in a strange land, on my face before God, crying and praying, saying, Jesus, feed my children. I need someone who'll go to those wells that I dug with my bare hands in the soil, where nobody could see us and nobody could hear us. But man, Jesus manifested Himself and that well was formed. I need those wells that have been plugged up. I need somebody to come and uncover those wells and to live off them. That's what I need for the next generation. I need someone who can do that. I need an Isaac. I need a Jacob. I don't need another Abraham. I need a Solomon with his soft little feminine hands.
That's great.
The man didn't see a day of war. We know he was a pretty boy. Not the calloused hand of a warrior who's battle scarred. I need a generation that's tender, where I've become so calloused. Because we do. You pioneer that much, guys, you get calloused. You get a thick skin. I don't know about y'all, but for me, the hardest challenge is to keep a thick skin and a soft heart.
That's it.
Because, listen, Jesus is my shield, but some things they get through, y'all. And you need a thick skin. You need a thick skin to take those attacks, to take the accusation, to take the backstabbing and the backbiting and the talking behind your back, and those that turn around and call you a cult and tell you that you ruined their life and it's your fault they got a divorce and it's your fault they're poor and it's your fault they're going through this, and because of course who else are we going to blame? Let's just pick a leader. Right? So as leaders, because we've had a pioneer, because like David, I mean, can you imagine how battle scarred David must have been, y'all? I mean, was he even recognizable? Was he even recognizable? You know, when you say Saul has slain his thousands and David is 10,000s, I mean, you're going to get cut if you're slaying 10,000. You're going to be a cut or two. And I mean, if you're just chopping off 200 foreskins, they did not hand those over easily.
No.
You and I both know there was a fight. There was a fight.
A strong fight.
You've been cut. You've been cut. Yeah, I know. I felt that. I felt that in the room. You know, I don't need that for the next generation. I need a Solomon who's unscarred and carries hurts, because we all carry our own pain, but not the ones I did. That's why it burns in you so much to make sure that your children don't go through what you did. That's actually really natural, and it's true of the apostolic too, because you carried the scars for them. You want to be a spiritual parent? Prepare yourself. You will carry the scars so they don't have to.
Absolutely.
That is the price of apostleship. That is the price of apostleship.
Absolutely.
The price of apostleship isn't how many people you get into your meeting, y'all.
Right.
It's to carry the scars so the next generation don't have to.
Jesus.
We want tender-hearted, soft-handed, nerdy, book studying, saturated with oil men and women of God, because we want them to build. We want them to see the world through a lens that we don't. Leaders, apostles, yes, you still have love in your heart, and yes, you love Jesus more than anything, but we're a little jaded, you know. We want to believe the best in people, but when you've gone through stuff, it's like when you faced some stuff, we'll become a little guarded. We become a little jaded. Even before the person comes, you're already like,
Yeah.
Right.
and it's not, yes, paranoid. I mean, and it's not like you're being a snob or you're being offish. You know, you look at all these leaders, like, he just think he's too good for anybody else. He can just go straight to his green room. He just think he's too good. Listen, you are not helping me. You've got to stop helping me. Listen. But here's the reality of why. We are a little jaded.
Yes.
We're a little jaded. There've been weird people that come to your conference. Sometimes, I need a bodyguard sometimes. And people are weird out there. There's some weird people.
Strange.
But the point is, you become jaded, and then you begin to view mandate, grace, vision, blueprint through those eyes.
Yeah.
Now, it's great for a pioneer. You need those eagle eyes, okay? To be a pioneer, we need that eagle view. We need to be sharp. We need to withdraw. We need to step back. We need to be jaded. We need to be savvy. We need to prepare for war. We need to see when the devil walks in, okay? And we need to always be looking for the devil. Yes. But keep in mind that that mindset does not establish kingdom. It prepares the way for it. And that's what our children are meant to do. And they cannot see with our eyes, guys. They cannot see with our eyes. They cannot have the same scars as us. They will have their own process. But we want the tender-hearted. We want the weak. We want the foolish. We want the love. We want the simple, childlike naivety on the throne. Not the next Saul. Stop raising up those after your own image, apostles. Stop it. No great man in the Old Testament and even in the New raised one up such as themselves in the same grace and in the same application. Timothy, another mama's boy. Another mama's boy. Another tender boy. And I know that because Apostle Paul had to even tell him to take medicine.
Yep.
You know, could you imagine me coming up to Apostle Jordan? Bruh, you need to take some Tums for that.
I got him in the hotel room.
Yeah, okay. But it would be just a little inappropriate, like, to make sure that I'm babying the man of God. Wouldn't it be weird? For me to make sure, did you take your vitamins this morning? You okay, boy? It'd be inappropriate. It'd be like... But so that Paul had that relationship with Timothy. You understand, Timothy was Solomon.
Yeah.
He was of a tender nature. And he was the one who established what Paul never could.
Yeah.
You see, because he wasn't stuck in prison like Paul. Paul was jaded. Paul was hardened. Paul was tough. Paul came with rod. Timothy did not. He was tender. Who's called for your oil? Who's called for your oil? I know I've...